Hello and welcome to the Mission Northwest podcast. We are here to resource and develop churches that connect people to Jesus. I am your host, Wesley Henry. I am sitting with our executive minister, Mr. Corey Lahari, and today's special guest is Will Haag.
Hello.
How's it going, guys?
It's
Hey,
going great.
thanks for having
Good to be
us.
together. Good to see you, Will. Good to see you again, Wes.
Hey, Corey, Wes.
Absolutely. We are in episode 5, and Corey, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest, and let's get into some of his story.
Yeah, Will is a great guy who's ministering out of Cle Elum, Washington, near the Cascades. If you're not familiar with Washington State and Cascade Mountains, just beautiful. He has elk sometimes in his front yard, but he's been called to be pastor of MannaFest, which is connected with Cle Elum Community Church, and MannaFest is a dinner church, and so Will is leading that ministry or serving in that ministry. And Will, we wanted you on the podcast to share your heart, learn more about you, introduce you to the broader Mission Northwest family, because the type of ministry God has called you to, I think, being done really effective in your context there and reaching people for the kingdom. And so I wonder if you could share a bit about your story and then share a bit about MannaFest, how God led you to that, what it is, what it isn't, and yeah, just teach us about that a little bit. Thanks for being here today, Will.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, Corey and Wes. I really appreciate it. I'm humbled by the opportunity. And I guess I'll start a little bit with my background, which is I was not raised in a Christian home, and all this kind of pertains. I was not raised in a Christian home, and God kind of radically got a hold of me, and I wasn't even looking for him. And so from very, very early on, that's almost 25 years ago now, I just had the mentality, if he got out of the grave, it changes everything. Like I never had an interest for just learning information, giving it mental assent, and then trying my best to be a better version of the old me. That was really never an interest of mine. And so I really wanted to know, like, what does he mean by, like, I may know him in the power of his resurrection? What does he mean that I'm a new creation? What does he mean that I've been crucified and it's now Christ living in me? Like, what does that mean? And so
Yeah.
tons of just study and pursuit and education, trying to, figure out, what does it mean we can have a personal relationship with him? Like, is that real? And so early on in my Christian experience, I just really focused on trying to learn and get closer to him. And then I started getting a pastoral call, and I told God he's got the wrong phone number, and really tried to push that out for quite a while. And then I wanted to get some, not training, education's fine. It's the quality of the training that matters, and what's going to focus on relationship, horizontal and vertical relationships. And so I did some in-person education to really, have those sidebar conversations, to have those difficult encounters, and really try to practice putting into place what we were being taught. And eventually settled in Cle Elum, and we've got a dozen Protestant churches like in a 5-mile radius. And so trying to pick one, and I've never been a huge fan of the Sunday model, because the modality itself can lend to the idea that Christianity is a matter of dispensing information and retaining information, being I'm good. And that doesn't mean you can't do it well. And obviously disciples can be made in any context, but I'm also a big proponent that we need to gather as the body. We need to sit under authority. We need to share. We need to try to one another. But that's just never been my main jam, because I think it's really hard to do it in 90 minutes in a book. It's just really hard to do all the one another's that you hear in the Bible in one gathering. So our lead pastor, Worth Wilson, went to a Fresh Expressions conference on the East Coast back in 2018, which is an organization that exists cross-denominational, trans-denominational, saying, hey, what are the other ways in the 21st century that we might be a healthy, realistic, God-honoring, Bible-honoring expression of the church? How might we do that? And so they try to gather like minds and brainstorm and share tools and success stories and failures. And while Worth was at that conference, he heard about this movement called the Dinner Church movement. which I'm happy to speak into more at length if you want. But he came
Yeah,
back.
please, yeah.
Please do speak more about the dinner church movement.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Sorry if
Okay,
that,
okay.
I didn't mean to step on you. Yeah,
No,
tell
it's
us
all
more.
good.
Yeah.
We can get back to our story in a second, how it happened here. But if I back up to the dinner church movement, there's research out there where this new phenomenon of gathering as a dinner church, which I'll define here in a moment, started simultaneously about 20 years ago now, within 2 or 3 years of each other, in all four corners of the U.S. So you had Emily Scott, who started St. Lydia's up in New York. She just got tired of the the Sunday model, and she's a little bit more on the liberal side, both in theology and modality. But she just said, "Look, there's people that are alone. I'm alone. Lonely." Like, and she ended up around a dinner table and started developing a theology of no, Jesus met people face to face. Jesus ate with them. People were welcome. Look at all the stuff he did around a table. And not a year or two after, Verlin Fosner in Seattle had taken Westminster Community Church as far as he could, and he said, "Look, we're not going to make it. The Sunday model is not going to make it. So what can we possibly do? Let's put it all in the chopping block. How do we stay biblical?" Long story short is they rediscovered the agape feast model in the book of Acts, and they said, "What if we did something like
Mm,
that?" And so they failed
mm-hmm,
with this, failed with that, but then they had this dinner church thing start, and they just had great success, and they noticed some of the reasons in the 21st century that the trends are going this way, and how might you feed into that in a healthy biblical way. For example, not necessarily my words, but others, some of the trends that are identified, like inflated sense of, well, I'll pause and say, on the societal level, Verlin and others have noticed that, look, we have hyper urbanization happening. We have a culture of technology and hyper dependence thereon. We have progressive social values, a lot of post Christian views. So that's going to change the dynamic of the 1950s ideal of, hey, come to us. Come to us. Come to the white building with a cross on top. It's no longer cool to
Mm-hmm.
do those, not to do that. It's no longer necessarily helpful for your business to do that. People don't necessarily want to come. So how do we as the church go to people? And then on the personal level, you have trends like inflated self sense of tolerance, hyper individualism, extreme
mm-hmm,
unbridled self expression. You have this extreme idea of real relativism and my own personal truth. And well, how do you feed into
mm,
that? Well, Verlin and others have really identified through trial and error that people are hungry for genuine relationships, personal authenticity, and true
mm,
meaning. Even if they don't know that, even if they
mm.
couldn't articulate that, they really, really are. And so they're
Can you
seeing
say
these
those again?
things, the genuine
What they're hungry for?
genuine
Yeah.
relationships, personal authenticity. So I don't give a rip what Corey says if Corey's not being real. Like, I want to know the real
Mm-hmm,
Corey. And I want to know that you're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know your struggles. And number
mm,
three, true meaning.
So good.
Like, we're getting
Mm-hmm.
kind of sick of, well, what's true for me doesn't have to be true for you. Like, that
mm,
sounds good, but either boiling water scalds or it doesn't, and not everything's
mm,
black and white. That's not the intent. But when nothing matters, when nothing has true meaning, then there's no anchor, there's no mooring
Mm.
line. It's really hard on people. And so Gen
So
X,
good.
Gen Z, whatever comes after that, people they want to belong, they want to know, they want to have something they can grab onto in terms of meaning and personal identity and purpose and belonging. And that's just been really, really important. And so those type of things were identified as easily accessible in a dinner church type format. And by dinner church, what I mean is hosting a free communal meal, ideally in a non-churchy setting, not on a Sunday morning. So trying to
mm,
remove, in other words, some of the ecclesiastical obstacles in our culture, anyways, in the modern West, in order to remove as many obstacles as possible that allow people a chance who are at least spiritually curious to get a chance to meet the real Jesus and not just
Yeah.
mm,
hear a caricature of him, or not stop themselves from having that opportunity because they don't think they're good enough, or they don't have nice enough
mm,
clothes, or they don't know the right people. So get rid of as many boundaries as possible. meet in a communal center that's open and inviting, serve good food, generous food, try to example the generosity of Jesus, and uh, be unabashedly Christian, but not do the bait and switch. Say, hey, we're going to have a Bible message. We're going to have a Jesus story, whatever you want to call it. You're
Mm-hmm.
welcome to stay. You don't have to stay. Berlin and MannaFest, in our early days, we had a placard on the table that said something to that effect. Um, Verlin teaches slightly different than what we do in MannaFest. I'm happy to speak into that if you like, but that's generally how the dinner church movement started in the United States. And as of 5 years ago, there was over 1,000 dinner churches in the U.S. and
Wow.
it spread internationally. And obviously, we all know that it's not like we own the market on it. This is just a cycle of history, right? And we're just identifying in common vernacular what's been
Yeah.
happening over the millennia. But in terms of modern research and scholarship, we're able to identify these trends currently. So I'll pause if you have a
So
backup question.
yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
you have these agape feasts where you're eating around tables with folks, not on a Sunday night, but I think yours is Tuesday night. Break it down
Yep.
for me. What's a typical manifest? Is there a typical? I don't know if typical is the right word, but are there people coming who are not your average Sunday morning people? This is not just Sunday morning people coming on Tuesday night. That's not what we're talking about, right? So, yeah, tell me more about what manifest looks like, and people a picture of it in your context.
Yeah, in order to do that, I think I need to honor Verlin first and say we've departed from his model a little bit, and we were actually mentored by him. His model would be much more universally applicable, I believe, because
Okay.
they have a meal and they highly intentionally keep the speaker, the sermon, the message, whatever, to 10 minutes or less. So they may
Mm,
literally get up and just read a Jesus story. They may just tell a parable and then maybe a few comments, but they're not preaching a proclamation style Sunday typical message or sermon, and they're highly
mm,
intentional on not doing that because
mm.
they really
Okay.
believe that people will come in and you have to build that trust and you don't want to blow them out of the water. And so they will, as Verlin describes it, people will come in and intimacy starts with just talking about the weather, surface level stuff. Then people, if they trust you, they'll start talking about limitations. Hey, I'm going through this divorce. And then they'll start talking about spiritual matters. And if you rush that
Mm,
process, either through preaching at them during that 10 minutes or one-on-one over the table, people may just scat. They may just leave. So
mm,
they
okay.
also include in the Seattle Dinner Church model music, oftentimes live, just playing in the background. They'll even do gospel art. They'll have somebody who's maybe drawing a picture of whatever the theme was from the parable. And so they're
Mhm.
pretty intentional on keeping it low key, might be the wrong word, but less formal and less intense. And it's really, really beautiful.
Subversive.
And yeah, and you can talk to Verlin and his wife about stories where people were there for 4 years before they thought, before Verlin and his team thought that they were interested in all at all. The next thing you know, they've been in it. They just were keeping their mouth shut, or it took 4 years before they started talking to Jesus or praying to Jesus. And so there's not a heavy emphasis on I'm going to intentionally try to target this person and evangelize them. It's much more of a natural and organic process that they let unfold naturally. MannaFest departed from that in part because of my background, my absolute hunger for practical application of the gospel and wanting to see change in people's lives. Um, we're a town of 2,000, so whereas Verlin's pastors may meet in a tattoo parlor or Salvation Army or VFW or whatever, 99.9% of the time they're not going to see those people again. I'm going to see the same people 5 times this week because we only have 2,000 people. So I
Right.
can't go to the grocery store or the hardware store or the gas station without running into people. So there's already a relational fabric undertone written into the fabric. It's already there because we already know these people for the most part,
Hmm.
So we have a homeless population of a couple dozen, not thousands. So before people even come to MannaFest, I may know the people that are homeless before they ever got there, so to speak, if they decided to show up. So I will continue once I know whether or not we're going to wait for Corey. Is he coming back or?
No, go ahead. Yeah, he should pop back in a minute.
Okay. So MannaFest is different than that model because we intentionally meet and gather an hour before the dinner's ready. We have people that start showing up, people that start eating breakfast, desserts, and really enjoying fellowshipping with one another. And then we serve dinner. We try to be super generous with the amount and the quality of food. And then I typically preach a message that's 30 minutes, sometimes longer. But I try really, really hard to preach without being preachy. And I try to talk to the non-Christian as much as the non-Christian. So I will literally say stuff like, well, the Bible says, or Jesus teaches, or Christians believe, or near the end of a message, I will say, if you are not a Christian, XYZ, or if you are a Christian, XYZ. And I literally try to talk to both demographics of the entire spiritual spectrum at the same time. And I purposely try to eliminate as many $10 words and high churchy words as possible to promote understanding. But probably the most unique thing about MannaFest that differentiates us from the Seattle Dinner Church model, or maybe others, is we have an open discussion every single week that lasts as long or longer than the message. So we literally invite people to disagree. We invite people to ask questions. We ask people to share their own stories. Sometimes people ask me a question and I'll say, what do the rest of you think? It's not a stump the pastor moment. It's not purely Q&A. It's literally a familial discussion about what we were just talking about. Hopefully. Sometimes people try to derail it because we have quite the spectrum of participants. But it is extremely unique and really, really a blessed moment, a blessed part of our gathering when people get to share from their hearts, whether it's agreement or disagreement. And probably most powerfully is when they share stories of what God's doing in their lives right then and there. And that it's priceless.
That's amazing. That's so good. That's so good. And so then in speaking on, you had mentioned some of the clientele is a little different. Like give us a little bit of a rundown of, maybe what type of clientele do you have? Who shows up? If it's not a typical quote unquote churchy Sunday crowd, who attends MannaFest?
Yeah. I'm going to answer that question by backing up to our where we left off with regards to my story in terms of when Pastor Worth got back with the idea of Dinner Church. We had a small group who was a part of the Cle Elum Community Church who said, hey, we'll give this a shot. And then we got some training directly from Verlin, super fortunate. And we then were able to gather 25 volunteers from 5 different churches to go through training about how we might interact with people that don't look like us, how we might interact with the poor. And by poor, yeah, sure, socioeconomically, but also spiritually poor, social network poor, transportation poor, like all types of poverty. And so we try to drill that mentality into folks that, hey, people aren't lucky just because we're showing up. Like we're trying to be the hands and feet of Jesus and love whoever comes to the door. Everyone's invited. Doesn't matter what you believe, but we're still going to be unashamedly Christian. And so we intentionally met not in a church building and not on a Sunday. And we had a rule and we still have a rule, which is we don't publicly advertise for anything. We always invite people face to face. So anybody who walks through the door already knows somebody. That would be the intent. We did put some street signs out so people might be able to find the building, but I don't think our signs ever flagged somebody in that wasn't going to come anyways. Highly, highly relational. And because it's a small town, it's easy to know people from all different areas of life and demographics. So when we started, we would typically have a third of the group, which was everybody knows you're Christian, you're going to be here every week. A third of the group was everybody knows you're Christian, you may or may not be here. And a third of the group was blatantly, you are not Christian, you are not claiming to be Christian, and nobody thinks you're a Christian. In terms of socioeconomics, we literally have people that sometimes come drunk, sometimes come high, sometimes come homeless. And we also have the other end of the spectrum. We have people that are millionaires and super lonely and not Christian, millionaires that are Christian
Mm.
and happy to be there, people that are super overeducated, and people that never made it out of high school. And so it's really even just, I mention this often to the entire MannaFest family, that just on a sociological level, it's a really cool human experience to have that much diversity all in the same place at the same time. Just letting go of our differences and sharing a meal and looking at one another as humans is really, really, uh, holy is a Christian word, so to speak. It's just, it's really wholesome. It really
Mm.
makes a person feel
Yeah.
alive to
Sacred.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, sacred, to be seen and welcome. So our audience is very, very varied. When COVID hit, it kind of messed with our building because we were in a place that had a restaurant that kept opening and closing. So post COVID, we've been actually in the community church foyer, which isn't a bad
Mm.
thing. But it's made it a little more difficult for the people that are skeptical of a church, so to speak. So it's a little harder
Right.
entry point. But we already had such a familial bond with such a large core group. We're anywhere from 50 to 60 on a regular Tuesday. Um, we had such a large and strong bond with that core group that post COVID, we just actually got tighter. And now it's another topic we can talk about. Second and third generation disciples have done the inviting for us. So we still have some new growth, but I don't think we would have had that if we started in a church building.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds amazing. And, you know, like you were saying, those moments, we don't always see, or plan for those types of things. And so God knows what he's doing. So then to have somebody like yourself who is, open and saying, hey, God, I'm here. Let's just do this. Let's try this. I think that's it's a very humbling place to be in. And at the same time, it's definitely something like that's how God uses us very often, is to say things like, hey, I need you. I built you. I know who you are.
Yeah.
Let's go reach people for the kingdom. And so, and I know your pastor of Cle Elum Community Church pretty personally. He's my mentor pastor. So, and then also to have a pastor that gets the vision and understands, and then just says, "Hey, let's just go for it. Let's reach the kingdom." I think that's so special to have. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
If I can
Corey,
jump
any
in and
input on
mention
that?
that,
Oh yeah,
if
go
I
for it.
can, yeah, if I can follow up on that, because that's really, really critical, and it's probably pertinent for this podcast for people to understand, is Pastor Worth and our team were adamant that we were not trying to create an on-ramp to the Sunday crowd from day one.
Correct.
That was
Correct.
not
Mm.
our goal.
Yeah.
We were going to be an expression of the church, an outreach, a missional outreach, whatever you want to call it. But that was not what, it was not going to be bait and switch. It wasn't going to be like, oh, you've been here a year. Now come to real Christianity on Sunday. That was not the
Right.
Mm.
intent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much
Absolutely.
so that,
So good.
I didn't, have a title with the community church. We didn't meet there. We did absolute best to say, oh, we're so grateful for the community church letting us use XYZ, even though I'm a member of the community church. But God
Right.
kept
Right.
pushing us back together. And now we have a 20-person overlap. We have 20 people that go to both Tuesday and Sunday every week. We
Mm.
never intended that. And most of that is people that came from MannaFest to the Sunday church, not the other way around. So there has been
Okay.
some inroad. There has been some growth in the Sunday because of it. And just recently, God has made it pretty obvious, and this is the part that might be pertinent for people that are listening and wondering how might God want me to use this model, is God's making it quite obvious that he wants to use MannaFest as a primary discipleship training ground for the Sunday church participants that have not to this point had anything to do with MannaFest.
Oh,
Okay. That's
cool.
And
good.
what I mean by that is like inviting them to participate, not just come and eat, but like, how is God asking you to be involved in what God is doing through MannaFest? That might be doing dishes, that might be money, that might be sitting down at a table with people, that might be volunteering to meet some of the needs from the people that get identified in the Tuesday group. But you got to go through some training. You got to figure out why we're doing what we're doing. We got to talk about the culture shift. We got to talk about not
That's so
everybody
good.
thinks like you in the terms of I want to come sit in a pew, listen, sing one song, listen to somebody talk. I can't ask any questions, sing another song and leave. Like not everybody thinks like you.
Right,
And
right.
to
Yeah.
share some of the stories about the growth that our volunteers have gone through and literally get up one of these Sundays in 2026 and say, hey, uh, we'd love to have you, but we don't want you to mess it up. So you're invited, but you got to go through some training first because you churching people
Yeah.
are dangerous,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
say
yeah.
it with love,
Absolutely.
but invite them into that process. Because even that we're this is our 7th year, we still have people that think we're just a soup
Wow.
kitchen. People
Mm.
Oh,
from the
wow.
community church that have been there that whole time that think, oh, we're just passing out food to homeless people. But
Mm.
Man.
to a number, when people come and actually participate in a Tuesday night, they leave saying, at a minimum, that was not what I expected it to be, or wow, I can't
Mm.
believe God's doing what He's doing, because of when they see stuff like that question and answer period, that discussion, and people stand up and say, yeah, I'm a baby Christian. And when my husband was beating me while I was pregnant, and then I came up here and I was really wondering how God was going to use this dark season, but I don't understand it all. But I do know He loves me. People are like, how in the world does that person have the cojones to say what they just said in front of everybody?
Yeah.
And their
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
their
Well, I mean,
paradigms just get cracked.
Mm.
right, right. I mean, there's a gigantic difference between like a visceral faith, coming to God, and or sort of having a homespun, homegrown faith that you just kind of been in it the whole time, and
Yep.
the stories tend to shock. They really do.
Yep.
And so it's a great thing then to have that crossover and open people's eyes to say, there's real ministry happening. It
100%.
may not carry the title, quote unquote, of ministry, but come on, there's real ministry happening.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my
Mm.
favorite
So,
people gets up and talks about, she almost always introduces herself this way. Yeah. So I did drugs for 35 years and was barely in touch with reality. And Jesus met me. And then she makes her
nice.
point or whatever. And just recently she's talking about, and I finally realized that I'm a bummer lamb and I'm okay with that. And God's sending me out to find bummer lambs. And people are like, what are you talking about? She's like,
Hmm.
you know what a bummer
Come
lamb
on.
is? And we're like, what? She's like, well, when a baby lamb is born, sometimes it gets rejected by its mother. And then the shepherd has to
Hmm.
feed that baby by hand, that baby lamb by hand. And it's not that the shepherd loves it any more or any less, but when the shepherd comes out in the morning and he says, sheep, 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 those bummer lambs are the ones that know his name the best and come running first. And I'm one of them, and
Mm.
Yeah.
he's sending me out to find other bummer lambs. And
Mm.
then the
Yeah.
Christian of
That's
40
beautiful.
years is like, what is going on in here?
Right, right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's amazing.
So there's a real life.
Hey.
The way I describe it to MannaFest crowd is there's an intersection of heaven and earth almost every Tuesday. I mean, we have to mess it up for there not to be like something that I couldn't possibly plan. You might call it there's a presence of the Spirit in a palpable way, even for
Mm.
non-Christians to notice. And it's just it's a totally different type of preaching in terms of preach the gospel, sometimes use words. I'm talking about the nonverbal, where people are sharing stuff like that and they're
Right, right.
experiencing that type of love and understanding and exposure and authenticity without spontaneously combusting. And the got it all together Christian sitting in the corner is wondering why they're so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Mm.
What were you going to say, Corey?
Well, I'm thinking a number of things. It's just beautiful. But, when you're proclaiming a message, what are the types of uh, responses? We think, if we think of the church model of people coming forward or turning in a card, but imagine a dinner church where somebody's coming to faith. Does it happen more organically in conversation? Do people stay afterwards? How are you? I know you've seen some people make decisions to follow Jesus, and yeah, paint that picture for me. How have you seen that happen in different ways? And then the next question I want to just explore with you is, if a church is thinking about doing something like this, what do they need to start thinking about or praying about? So first, like,
Mm-hmm.
how have you seen people respond to faith? What does that often look like? That's just my curiosity. And then what could a church who's thinking about doing this pray about?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, great questions. I'll share what Verlin shared with us, almost 10 years ago now with not promoting an altar call or asking somebody to pray
Mm-hmm.
a sinner's prayer, but being much more organic. He I believe they still kind of use this as a rubric, is they look for people that start praying to Jesus, and they listen to that.
Mm.
They listen for that. He said
Mhm.
sometimes they'll have people there for years, and then just one week they start talking about how they were talking to Jesus. And they're like, what
Mm.
was that? They're like trying to pick up on that and
Yeah.
trying to find what we might consider less orthodox ways of identifying the existence of a relationship budding. Instead of trying to force it, they try to, let it cultivate and try to find it. So we don't do altar calls. We don't do, sinners prayers. We don't do raise your hand. I see that hand, close your eyes. And I'm not saying all that's evil or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
It is much more, much, much more organic in the sense of it's it's most usually going to happen in a sidebar and most usually not on a Tuesday per se. So we're highly,
Mm.
highly relational. We're pushing, pushing, pushing relationship. Like this is not the Pastor Will show. If Corey and Wes are coming and Jesus and you're sitting at a table, you're just as important as I am. You're going to be exposing people to the love and light of Jesus more than I am, because you're going to sit around and have a meal with them. So how you treat them, how you talk to them, I'm going to talk at them for the most part, but you're going to talk to them and with them. And so really trying to focus on not just the dinner table, but are we building trust and relationship, especially in our community, that transcends the Tuesday? Like when you identify a need and there's enough trust built, might you be willing to give that person a ride? Might you be willing to show up when that
Mm.
person's sick? And heaven help you, might you be willing to learn from them? Might you be willing to
Yeah.
let them meet one of your needs?
Mm.
Or are you just going to always
Mm-hmm.
retain this upper dominant posture of, I got my life together, I don't need anything, you're lucky that I'm here? What can you do to equal the posture, the relationship, and actually invite them to have causality, invite them to
Mm.
have empowerment? And in those relationships is where people end up meeting Jesus. Obviously I can't tell if it happened Tuesday at 6:06 p.m. or whatever, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
generally
Mm-hmm.
people coming back and reporting that they had met Jesus because somebody at the table invited them to their home or to a different Bible study or gave them a ride or whatever the case may be. And MannaFest is more of the celebratory gathering of, can you believe what Jesus is doing? Now, at the same
Mm.
time, I was telling
Amen.
Wes, I try really hard to speak to Christians and non-Christians simultaneously. So at the end of a
Mm-hmm.
message for application or something, I'll be like, if you're not a Christian, XYZ, consider these things. If you are a Christian, consider these things. And so I try to leave
Yeah,
handles for everybody to grab on wherever they are on the spiritual spectrum. And
that's
then I
good.
try to be super, super practical. I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, we were preaching about the new man versus the old man in Christ. Like I was dead, now I'm alive. And so I brought in two strands of Christmas lights. And I had one that was unplugged and one that was plugged in. So one was lit up, one was not. And I tried to use that as a visual reference, like, this is you. This is you. If you're not a Christian, the Bible says this is you. Like you're not plugged in. And so it's impossible
Mm.
to do the things that God asks you to do because you don't have his light and his love in you. And if you are a Christian, this is supposed to be you, but you often try to do what he asks like this. And so I just was going on with this juxtaposition about old you, dead, alive, blind, can see. And
Nice.
that was probably great. God probably blessed it. But we had another lady who was in drugs for 30 plus years. She just starts sharing. She's like, first, her hand just shot up, and she doesn't speak very often. And she says, I finally get it. Like, I literally thought I was dead my whole life. Like, when I first came here, I was hearing voices. I'd been in a mental institution and nobody believed me. And I'd tried to explain this and that. And I felt so dead. And then I met
Mm.
Jesus and everything, like it's not everything's great, but everything changed. And I felt so
Yeah.
alive. And why did nobody ever tell me that? Like I was actually dead. And I'm like,
Mm.
yes, you were, and then
Wow.
Mm.
she
Wow.
was preaching to the crowd as much as I was, because
Mm-hmm.
there were other 30-year Christians in the crowd who were like, why have I never heard it described that way? Like, why have
Mm-hmm.
I been trying to muster up the strength to
Wow.
follow Jesus with the old dead guy? And so those type of
Mm-hmm.
things
Yeah.
transcend a Tuesday, and people can actually chew on that, have conversations outside of that. And I honestly think a lot of that stems not from me sharing, and yes, God, the Spirit can be in there through the preaching, but when people say, aha, I got it. Or can you explain that? Or I mean, sometimes it's like, I have no idea what you were talking about. Can you say that again? So, but it just gives
Yeah.
that opportunity for other voices, other perspectives, other touch point. I call it spiritual glue and Velcro, for some other Velcro to grab a hold of what God's trying to teach each person in that room, for it to go outside of that gathering.
Yeah.
I'll share one more example of the opposite of what I'm talking about. And this has nothing to do with dinner church. And I'm not bagging on all Sunday church, just to make the example. Last year, I had somebody come in and they were like, "Oh my goodness, did you hear the sermon from such and such local church this weekend?" I was like, "No, what was it about?" And they were like, "I don't remember, but it was so good. You gotta log in and listen to it." I'm like, "Okay." And they turned to a person at the table next to them and they said, "Hey, you were there. What was that sermon about on Sunday?" They're like, "Oh, it was so good. It was so good. It was about I don't know, but you got to listen to it." And they turned to a third person and said, "You were there." And they said, "Yeah, it was about dot, dot, dot." And I said, "Actually, that's what tonight's about. That's on the card in front of you." And they were like, "Oh, I don't remember what it was about, but it was so good." I don't want that. I don't want to be a part of that. Yes, I believe God can change you, but I think a lot more if you can digest it, wrestle. Like, give me one apple that I will eat, spiritually speaking, and transform me, instead of a bushel or an orchard that I just stare at and applaud. And aren't you entertained? Like, no, I want to meet the King, and I want to help people be changed by him. And so for us in our context, having that open dialogue opens up the corridors of spiritual glue and Velcro for people to actually get it, chew on it, have some natural, organic way and touch point to talk about it again with other people, that I think has been transformative for both Christians and non-Christians.
Yeah.
Good.
So
So
good.
if a church is exploring that, Will, what are some? I know they could go to a thing by Verlin Foster or Fosner. Sorry,
Positive,
but
yeah.
what would you tell them where to start as a local group? What should they be praying or thinking about? What are the questions maybe they should ask?
Yeah, I think practically speaking, they got to ask why they want to do it. If we're
Hmm.
talking 1980s church growth model, this is just another way to grow the church, then it's not going to work. If
Yeah.
so, they've got to ask themselves what their motives are.
Yeah.
I would really, really recommend they go visit 1, 2, 3, 5 dinner churches, and that's really not that hard to do. They're all over the state, and try to go to more than one, because one is just going to give you an idea of the model, but not necessarily the idea of the ability to customize it for your context. So I'd go experience it for sure, because that taught us a lot more than any book we read, and certainly read Verlin's books. But I would really ask and look for missional experts in your church. And by missional, I don't mean someone who's been to Africa. I mean someone who understands that God says, "Look, I live in you, and now you are the living sacrifice. I want you to die. I want you to lay it down. I want you to empty yourself. And by the way, that's when you'll get the most of me. So go out and serve like I did, and then people will not only see me, but you'll get more of me too." And people that don't just understand that, but people have tasted that and said, "Ooh, that's good. I got more of Jesus because I laid down my preferences. I went to listen to the least and the lost, and I went to serve, and I was able to get out of the way and see a soul and let God use me. And sometimes that doesn't look like what I expect." So, are there any missional experts in your congregation already? If not, go find one. Like, go learn from one.
That's
Like,
good.
I don't know. It'd be really hard to do this cold turkey, to just say,
Mm-hmm.
"Okay, I have the information. Now I'm going to go do it." Um,
It's not just a model they should just pick up and start doing it
yeah,
because it's cool or hip or
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's other,
Well,
there's a whole gamut of formal resources too, like the Seattle Dinner Church movement. Verlin and his team, they have like 12 plus, last time I checked, churches that are not directly under him, that just took the training, but even get the food from him. And there's a symbiotic relationship there, but they actually have this relationship that helps logistically as well as spiritually. So there's that possibility as well.
Cool. Hey, I don't know if we have time. It might. I think we got time, Wes. He has a great story. I'd like him to tell. If you're willing to tell it, you want to. You, you want to tell the burying the dog story, or no?
Oh, I think that might be helpful. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh
Kind of
yeah,
give it.
Okay. Yeah.
we got time. Let's go for it.
We got
Yeah,
time.
kind of
Okay.
give people a
But
taste.
we've
Kind of
told our audience now that there's a burying the dog story, so it's just a good example, I think. Anyway, I'll let
yeah.
you set it up here.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the other unique things that we do in our context is we try to get people to share their own Jesus story. Once every 6 or 8 weeks, I'll invite somebody to take my speaking time to tell their story. And it's a real discipleship opportunity. I don't just hand somebody a mic. I meet with them months and weeks in advance, and I give them a list of starter questions. And then I contextualize it to, hey, do you want to speak? Do you want me to interview you? Do you want to bring your spouse up? And so it's a lot of opportunity to grow relationships and to help them hone how and what they want to share. And so when they get up every time to a T, I say, hey, look, this is not easy. If you think it is, you're sharing next week. And then I share, we're a family and we're not going to violate each other's trust. And part of what makes MannaFest so special is that it's a safe place to be authentic. So we're not going to go put stuff on Facebook. I mean, because we have people share about being gang raped, we have multiple ladies who had husbands that tried to kill them, like actively tried to kill them. We have
Mm,
people, I mean, we have half a dozen people in there with that have lost adult children. I mean, it's just
mm,
the things that people share is just incredible. So, anyways, on one of those evenings, I got up and said all that. We had a guy share, and he had just gone through some really rough stuff, including a divorce. There was a friend of the ex-wife who was in the audience. And that friend went out afterwards and didn't just say what the person shared. And this person was pretty fragile, but misconstrued what was shared. And it was devastating to this person who shared. And they hung with it. And,
mm,
we were able to love on them. And a few months went by, and some of us quietly approached this other person and said why that was not a good thing and how that can hurt. And this person, how it can hurt the family. And months later, this person got up and did publicly apologize at a MannaFest gathering. And they were like, hey, forgive you, it's all good. Well, fast forward another 6 months, and this same person who went out and misconstrued the information had a dog die. And this
Yeah.
person was too sick and not physically able to dig a hole. But they also didn't want to ask for help. So the dog sat in the Cle Elum 85 degrees sunshine in the summertime for 3 days in the back of this truck. Somebody else from MannaFest came to me and said, hey, can we help this guy bury his dog? I literally just turned to my table and I said, hey, could you two find somebody to go help? That's it. Because, Tuesdays are busy for me, people coming and going. All I did was turn and say, would you two, the two people that were closest to me, which happened to be, one of them happened to be the guy who was lied about. And
mm.
instead of going to find other people, he just volunteered to go bury the
Wow.
dead dog. And so he shows up to bury the dead dog of this guy. And this guy is like, what are you doing? Of all people, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This guy picks up this guy's 3-day dead burning in the hot sauna sun. I don't mean to be graphic, but it's wrapped in a blanket, and not all the dog was staying in the blanket, if you get my drift. Carries
Uh-huh.
the dog
Yeah.
up a hill, finishes digging the hole, buries the dog, and this guy's just wrecked. Why would that guy love me like that after I did what he did to me?
Mm,
Mm.
And so we've actually shared that story publicly, and we now have personal language of let's bury each other's dead dogs. Like, let's live this thing out. Like, we're not going to be
mhm,
perfect. It's
Yeah.
what we do with our mistakes. We're not going to never not make mistakes. Let's be different than the world by burying each other's dead dogs. And those two aren't besties, but they still, they still hang out once in a while, and they are way closer because of all that mess than they ever would have been if it never happened in the first place.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah. Praise God for that kind of
It's really cool.
testimony and transformation, real life stuff there, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Man, you've been a blessing, Will. And if you're a church out there and you want to learn more about this type of ministry or talk to Will, we can connect you with him at Mission Northwest. You can probably Google his name. No, you can't. I don't know if you can find MannaFest online. Can you? No, you can't. So you got to connect them through Mission Northwest or Cle Elum Community Church. But we can help resource you if God is calling you for the right reasons to start reaching out to your community in this way. We can connect you to Seattle Dinner Church or some of those good books that Will mentioned, so that people could be reached and experience this real life living out of the gospel in the world, and not just on a Sunday morning, which God can still obviously work through Sunday morning ministry. But thank you, Will, for sharing and your heart. And Wes, you got anything else?
No, man. Thank you, Will. I really appreciate your time and your stories. And, I'm really excited to see how God is just going to continue. I mean, it's been 7 years and we're still scratching the surface of how God is going to continue to use MannaFest and the Cle Elum area to just, grow the Big K kingdom, right? So
Big K.
amazing,
Thank you both. Thank you both for the invitation, and always excited to be a part of watching what God's doing.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you guys for watching. If you are watching on YouTube, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share what you see. If you're just listening on any of the podcasts, make sure you smash that like button. Let us know. It'll also help us out getting all of these stories out to everyone. Thank you, Corey, for letting me be a part. Again, thanks, Will, for being with us today. And we will catch you guys on the next episode.
All right. See you guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.